Thank you, colleagues. Before we move on to the next application, we will have another change to the running order, such that we will see Popeyes first. So the second applicant in the original running order, and I'll pose that for a vote. All those in favour? Yeah, that's all three of us. Fantastic. In which case, let's get the applicant in. Good evening. Thank you for making the time to come to tonight's subcommittee hearing. I'm Councillor Theodore Jupp. I'll be the chair tonight, and we'll proceed with introductions. Beg your pardon. Introductions first, and then declare any relevant interests. Colleagues.
Okay, I'm Councillor Simon, and I'm on the committee today.
Hello, I'm Councillor Morris. I'll also be sitting on the subcommittee this evening.
Brilliant. Can I ask the officer to introduce us?
Yeah, Emma Thompson, Senior Licensing and Compliance Officer on behalf of the Licensing Authority, representing the report this evening.
I'm Alison Daly. I'm a solicitor at the council and I'm advising the subcommittee this evening.
Hello, I'm Tanaka Merrills. I'm a trainee solicitor.
Hi, I'm Aswan from Law and Governance.
Brilliant. Could I ask all of the rest of you to introduce yourselves, please?
Alex Bloomfield. I'm an alcohol licensing officer with Thames Valley Police based at Headquarters South.
My name is Robert Ofer. I'm a director of Spirit Bar Limited that trades as Hanks Bar.
My name is Goyan Iwan, Operations Director for Popeyes UK and Ireland.
And Mark Browning, representing Popeyes.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, are there any declarations of interest on this item? Seeing none, I think that satisfies the requirement. In that case, assuming there are no questions as to the conduct of these proceedings, seeing none, I'll move to Emma for the presentation of the report.
Thank you, Chair. This licensing subcommittee hearing is convened to determine an application for the grant of a premises licence submitted by PLK Chicken UK Limited for the premises licence in respect of Popeyes, 36 to 37 Queen Street, Oxford. The applicant has applied for the following licensable activities and times: the provision of late night refreshment provided both indoors and outdoors from Sunday to Saturday, so daily 2,300 hours until 200 hours. A copy of the application and the steps that the applicant intends to take to promote the licence and objectives is found at Appendix 1 or pages 9 to 30 of Supplement 6 document. The application received no adverse comments from Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue Service as a responsible authority under the Licensing Act. The application did, however, receive a representation from Thames Valley Police, highlighting concerns in relation to crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance. A copy of the Thames Valley Police representation is found at Appendix 2 or pages 31 to 54 as Supplement Document 6. There is also one representation from an interested party, which could be found at Appendix 3 or page 54 of Supplement 6. The representation highlights concerns in relation to how the application may fail to promote the licensing objectives of public safety and the prevention of public nuisance. The subcommittee and all other parties at this hearing will note that there is a map attached detailing the applicant's premises and the surrounding areas, and this is detailed at Appendix 4 or page 56 of Supplement 6 document. It must also be noted that this premises is within the city centre special saturation policy area. However, this is no longer in force as of the end of April 2025 and is currently being reviewed with a cumulative impact assessment as required under Section 55A of the Licensing Act 2003. Details of this is found at paragraphs 13 to 15 of your report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, do you have any questions for Emma? Councillor Tina.
Can you just clarify what it meant by indoors and outdoors?
I assume that means for consumption inside the premises and consumption off the premises. Yeah, take away.
Thank you. Any other questions? Or from anyone else? Yes.
So I just have one. Is it possible on any of these screens to bring up a picture of the premises? I mean, I've got a picture on my phone. I don't know whether I could email that to somebody and have it put up on the screen, but I just think it would be useful to see. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but just to see the frontage. And I mean, I have got a photo on my phone, but
as well, is that practicable and desirable? Did you say you had a paper copy?
No, sorry, I haven't got a paper copy. I've got a photograph on my phone. I could email to governance, for instance, and if.
Chair, I mean, Usworth thinks that it may be possible, if you send it, if you were to email it to Usworth, we could try and basically share, Usworth could share her screen. We can try, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, maybe you can just bring your phone and the photographs to the subcommittee. Okay. Do you see what I mean? Chair, it's whatever the subcommittee feels is most important.
The phone around to every committee member solution is not my favourite. But if we can do anything with email, then that'd be ideal.
Email to me and you can sit on my laptop.
Oh yes, that'd be good. Or yeah, email it to both Emma and as well. I mean, I personally know what it looks like very well, but brilliant. So yes, Councillor Tina.
Can you again fill us in on the premises nearby, that what time they stay open till?
Yeah, of course. I did omit a couple of things just off of my opening submission, as just to remind the subcommittee of its responsibilities under the Crime and Disorder Act and the Human Rights Act when considering the fair balance between the interests of the applicant and the rights of local business. And any decision by this subcommittee must be necessary and proportionate to the objectives being pursued. Members are reminded that whenever they make a decision under the Licensing Act, they have the duty to act with a view of promoting the licensing objectives. And when considering any representation, only those issues relating to the 4 objectives should be considered and appropriate weight given to the importance and relevance of each representation. In making the decision, the subcommittee must also have regard to the Home Office statutory guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, along with the Council's own statement of licensing policy, which is detailed in the body of the report. And the subcommittee must make such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. So this can include grant the premises in accordance with the application, modify conditions of the operating schedule by altering, omitting or adding to them, exclude or restrict the scope of the licence or any licensable activities, or reject the application in the whole. And you may also grant the licence subject to different conditions for different parts of the premises or different licensable objectives. And you must also note that the applicant and all persons making representations this evening or in the body of the report have the right to appeal against the decision made by the subcommittee. In regards to your question of nearby premises, there is 2 within probably walking distance. So you've got Sid's Kitchen, which is about 10-20 metres up the road on on Queen Street. That's Friday and Saturday, 2,300 hours to 400 hours, and Sundays, 2,300 hours to 300 hours. And then Open Door Kebabs, which is a little bit further down on New Road, opposite the Mound, Castle Mound, and they're 2,300 hours to 300 hours daily. And both of those are just late night refreshment, as the same as this application.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the licensing authority? Seeing none, I'd like to invite the applicant to outline their application, addressing the licensing objectives. You may call witnesses if you desire, but I don't see any. Oh, well, I'm taking both of you as the applicants. And cross-examination is discouraged, but if there is a desire to cross-examine any member of the panel, then put the request to me and I'll think about it. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can I just say initially that we want to act and work as responsibly as possible within Oxford, and we obviously take on board all of your policies and your cumulative impact zones and SSPs. Guillaume will talk more about that and how we operate very happily and successfully in other areas that have similar sorts of policies in place. One of them is Cambridge City Centre, and I know the police have looked into all of the places where we have Popeyes in the middle of cumulative impact zones, and I hope the reports back have been favourable about that. I also want to touch on some of the ways in which we're different to other similar sorts of restaurants, and Guillaume will highlight those. One thing that's particularly important is the way we deal with our deliveries. We have a unique system which other restaurants don't have, called the order button. I'm going to ask him to talk about that in due course. But let me say this. When we made the application, we ultimately wanted to arrive at a sensible balance between having the store open and allowing us to carry out deliveries. Having spoken to the police and looked at the representations, our submission would be that a sensible opening time and a fair opening time across the board would be midnight. So the premises would close to members of the public at midnight. The chairs would be upturned. The premises would be closed for all intents and purposes. And thereafter only, there would be deliveries. And I'm going to ask Brian to explain how that would work, how it would safely work, how it would not impact Hank's next door. One of the reasons I wanted the picture to be put up, and I know you're aware of the premises, is to see the layout. Popeyes has a very large frontage. Hank's has a very small shuttered entrance. And I think one of the representations was that Popeyes would interfere with Hank's operation. But it seems to me the other way around, that Hank's is a very small, narrow opening to the premises upstairs. Popeyes has the majority of the frontage. But despite that being closed, there wouldn't be any impact on the frontage whatsoever. But Graham, can I ask you just to talk first of all about the order button and deliveries?
Yeah, nothing too technical in the fact that it's an order ready button. So for anyone who's used the delivery service before or seen the riders, their whole metric and how we're measured and work with those delivery partners is that a driver should never be waiting. So from an economy perspective, they arrive, they pick up a bag of food and they go. And one of our metrics is how long we are keeping our riders waiting. So we have a maximum waiting of 2 minutes. So that means that when our food is ready for our customer, we push a button on a system called Deliverec, which integrates all platforms. So here in Oxford, you have Deliveroo, you have Uber, you have a Just Eat, and you click the order button. And that's so it's not about us timing the food to when the driver comes. It's the other way, that we cook the food, we prepare the food, and we push a button to say the food is ready. So those delivery drivers arrive, they grab the bag, and they move instantly away.
And I think the reason why this is important is because if you look at other premises, I don't want to name names, but you're aware of other restaurants that have a lot of order deliveries going out. Some of those restaurants encourage the riders to hang around. They're literally waiting outside, and that can be annoying to either residents, to people using the city centre, or it can be annoying to, well, just to the whole cumulative impact zone as a whole. We don't do that. We don't have people waiting. And in fact, we have very many less orders than some of the other restaurants that you will be aware of. I think the other ways in which Popeyes is different is that we have a much higher staff to customer ratio than others. We have a door host, and we also cook our food to order. Do you just want to mention that briefly?
Yeah, so from a ratio perspective, my directors won't like it, but it's we're a full service restaurant, so we're not a traditional QSR. You don't go to the counter, order your food, wait for the food. It's a table service restaurant. So yes, you have the option to order your food, go to the counter and pick up your bag. But 60% of our orders are taken to the table. So we host our doors, a customer order either the app, in the counter or the kiosk, and they've got the option to sit down or wait there, as many of us probably have, and wait for food to be shouted. But 60% of our orders are now delivered to the table. And again, that host piece is quite a big piece of our service.
And then I think another very important aspect from the police point of view is something that we have, unlike any others, which is called Staff Safe. And what that does is it enables the police to integrate with our cameras, if ever that is needed. So the police can instantly log on to our CCTV system. They can see exactly what's going on both inside and outside. And it's a system that we provide to the police, a quite unique system, I think, whereby we're giving them that extra level of security. So what I would say is, yes, we realise how important the SSP is to Oxford. We don't want to seek to denigrate that in any way at all. We are very happy to scale back the application from 2 a.m. to close at midnight. And we hope that you would agree that's a fair time and to offer deliveries thereafter. The impact on the SSP of deliveries only is, in my respectful submission, negligible, because the premises are closed. You're not attracting anyone to hang out outside the restaurant. There's no incentive to do that at all. We're closed. The lights are off. The closed sign is on the door. The chairs are upturned. Nobody is going to be attracted to those premises. And I think isn't that one of the main factors of the SSP, that you're trying to essentially make sure that the city centre is controlled much more effectively. You haven't got people who might have had drinks hanging around premises in order to try and get food or whatever it might be. We're not going to be in that category because we're closed. So the only thing would be deliveries. And when the delivery is ready, there's no hanging about. It's handed to the driver and the driver is off. So there's no question of bicycles, scooters, or whatever it might be hanging around. I think that from our point of view, that's the main thing. We have listened to everything the police have said. I hope they will endorse that our other restaurants in high stress areas have operated very responsibly with sympathy to the cumulative impact zone and the SSP in those areas. And of course, we want nothing else but to do that in Oxford.
Thank you very much. We'll take questions from colleagues and from other parties presently. I have a couple of my own. I'd just like to clarify, the application as submitted is for your restaurant to be open to the public until 1 and then delivery only between 1 and 2, but that doesn't align with what you mentioned.
No, we're amending it. We're amending it in view of what the police have said. We also take note of what Hanks have said. We want to be a good neighbour to Hanks. Personally, I'm sorry, we didn't know that you were actually here on behalf of Hanks because you were here earlier from another. But my apology, if I'd known that, we would have had a conversation beforehand. So I'm sorry about that. And also I'm disappointed to hear that there hasn't been interaction between yourselves and Popeyes, given that you're next door neighbours. So it seems crazy, and I'm sure Graham will want to speak to you afterwards anyway. And so I think that's a crazy situation that the general manager of Popeyes here hasn't knocked on your door and had a chat with you. But
could I ask you to be very specific about what you're asking?
Yes, we're amending the application to closure Sunday to Monday at midnight. So that would be closure to the public, and thereafter delivery only to 2 a.m. We are also accepting all of the suggested police conditions, with the exception of a small change in wording to reflect what we're asking for in relation to conditions 6 and 7. So for instance, excuse me, condition 6 says premises shall be closed and cleared of customers at the terminal hour for cessation of late night refreshment. So that would just be changed to say that the premises shall be closed and cleared of customers by midnight. And number 7, the last admittance for customers to the shop shall be 15 minutes before midnight. And that would cover that. So 6 and 7 would be amended, but otherwise everything else, and they're quite comprehensive conditions, asking for policies and asking for detailed logs and registers, but those are things that we do already. And if I can just ask you to confirm that is something that's standard within the company.
Yes, I can.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Colleagues, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to direct it at some of these.
Or anyone else?
Sorry, can I just Chairman, say how many other businesses in Queen Street or Corn Market are having deliveries between midnight and 2? I mean, like would have people picking up takeaways to be delivered 9 and 2?
Just the one van that was mentioned that would have people come in to collect, because obviously they don't do deliveries. The nearest restaurant would potentially be the Indian around the corner in New Inn Hall Street, in the old Argos site, but I don't know whether they deliver that late. I doubt it. Obviously McDonald's is limited till midnight. There isn't anyone else, as far as I'm aware, that delivers quite so late or early hours of the morning as proposed. I just had one question. It's midnight closure 7 days a week, and then deliveries only between midnight and 2 a.m. because you said Sunday to Monday. I was just wanting to double check.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, apologies. I meant daily. Of course, you know, that's what we were asked for. If the committee felt that certain days it wasn't acceptable to open to midnight, then we would obviously defer to the committee's judgment. But in terms of there is a demand for later deliveries, and the point I'm making is that your SSP is everything, but the deliveries do not impinge upon that. We take the SSP very, very seriously. but it's all about cumulative impact. And by closing the shop, we're not providing any cumulative impact at all. So that, you know, that's why I'm suggesting it, not to try and circumvent the SSP or anything like that. We're not about that. But we're simply saying that that is not something that we do that is impactful in terms of your policy.
Councillor Tina?
Okay, you sort of asserted that the delivery drivers wouldn't be hanging around outside, but as we've just heard, there is no other business in the city centre that will be providing that service. So I'm wondering perhaps what Alex thinks. Will delivery drivers inevitably be hanging outside, and does the fact of that impact, in your view, on issues that might be in the area?
Could we save this question for after Alex has had a chance to speak?
Yeah, I thought you meant immediate vicinity. Obviously, we have got another premises application after this one that is seeking to do similar. So there could be another venue that would be dealing with the same sort of hours at a different side of the city. I thought you meant in the immediate vicinity doing deliveries. Obviously, if you mean city centre, there is obviously Kebab King at Gloucester Green. They definitely do Deliveroo, and their licensable hours are actually to 5 AM as their latest. So there is that one that is of a longer nature than this one that has delivery drivers in the city.
The only thing I would add about them is that they're open to the public, which is a very different matter, because that is the magnet that attracts people who have been drinking or who have been out or who are out late at night. That is the magnet which we want to avoid. We do not want people hanging around who might have been to the pub or whatever it might be. We're only interested in those lady residents, in servicing proper, and in fact, one of the conditions you'll see is only deliveries to proper residential houses or proper businesses, but it's obviously going to, at that time of night, it's going to be residential, but we are not in the business, well, we would never in any event deliver to bus stops or to open parks or anything like that, so.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you. I just wanted a bit of clarification on your response to, so if in theory you were to be granted the licence change with the police conditions, you said you wanted to amend conditions 6 and 7, and I was just curious what the reasoning was there, because your proposed wording didn't, to my mind, seem to change much.
Only because we were talking, 6 and 7 referred to the closure of the premises. So we were saying if the premises closed at midnight, we'd still be providing late night refreshment afterwards, even though the premises was closed. So by delivery only. So all I was saying is that those two conditions should refer to when customers are off the premises and it closes, and also the last admittance to customers before it closes at midnight.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions on a range of different things. Mr. Brown, you mentioned the frontage towards the beginning of your submission. Frontage is one thing, but to my mind, the doorways at Hanks and at Popeyes are of a relatively similar size, unless...
What, do you mean the physical door itself? The door
that people used to get in?
Well, the door of Popeyes is to the left. Hanks is on the right-hand side, I think I'm right in saying. Popeyes has a large frontage, but the door sizes are similar. In fact, probably the Hanks door is a little bit wider because it's shuttered. I saw it shuttered today. But that door would not obviously being used for customers after midnight. And anything would be handed out to a driver by a door host and it would be closed.
The reason I ask is that I mean, you'll know that Hanks often attracts extremely long queues of people, and that part of Queen Street is quite severely congested on that pavement, partly because of the van that's there as well, the food van, and with the building works that have been going on recently as well in the Clarendon Centre. The hoardings have eaten up quite a lot of the pavement space. All of these factors make me wonder how prior to midnight you propose to deal with what will effectively be a huge bottleneck of people.
Well, it certainly won't be a bottleneck from our point of view because we certainly don't have queues or anything like that at that time. I mean, I don't know if that picture came through, excuse me. But it might be useful to see how big the frontage is for Popeyes and for Hanks. And inevitably, we're going to have guests of Hanks spilling onto the Popeyes frontage, but I still don't think it's wide enough. I'd say it's from the wall to the end of this table, at least. I'd say it's wide enough to accommodate your guests and to allow our guests to go in and out of the front door. I mean, without anybody upsetting each other. Oh, have you? Okay. I mean, I can also sort of hold this up. I don't know if that helps, but you know. Oh, that's the same one. Okay, all right. Well, I took that photograph this afternoon. Yes.
Thank you. I'm intrigued as well about this order button model of deliveries that you're using, and I think I understand your reasoning as to how it prevents drivers from congregating just outside the restaurant. But how does it prevent drivers from congregating elsewhere while they wait for something to come through?
Yeah, so I think if you're a driver, it works on two fronts, I guess. So you would always congregate as a driver next to the most popular delivery service in town. Right? And normally, I'd love to be that partner, but I'm not. So yeah, we cook fried chicken made to order by hand, right? This isn't a chicken that comes out the freezer and we sell for £1.99. The average price of a meal is £10 to £14. It's literally hand battered in store, flour, batter, and etc. So the average order I'm anticipating, should we be successful here, is post 11 o'clock being around 20 orders an hour. Right, put that into context of what McDonald's will do is probably in the region of, and we're both operators, probably do 400, 500 orders an hour. So we are minuscule versus what probably majority of big. I've got the privilege of charging a premium for the product that we sell. So I think the volume is now for us is really important. You know, if you're a driver, you hang out around the property that gives you most work. And unfortunately, I'd love to be that again, but I'm not. So therefore, the order button for us is about because we don't have the congregation. We require a service that pushes the button to call the driver to come. And that's the confidence I have that we don't get. If anything, we have the opposite, which is we have to have the button, which is why I brought it in to the business, that I need a device that calls the driver, because actually the reality is they don't hang outside waiting for us.
Okay, thank you. Another question about your model. Mr. Browney, you mentioned that when the restaurant is open to the public, people come in, sit down, and their order's taken and served to them at the table. I appreciate that prior to midnight, the incidence of alcohol-fueled disorder is likely to be less than after. Nonetheless, doesn't having people sitting down in the restaurant waiting for their order, which may or may not take a while if the restaurant's busy, maybe after they've had pre-drinks for whatever night out they're going to go out on, increase the risk of, in that confined space, disturbances happening?
Well, we have a very strict policy of, we have a door host, which most other similar restaurants don't have. And one of the primary things that they look for is anybody who might be influenced by drink. So we have a very strict rule about that. We have a zero tolerance for it. We don't allow people in who we feel might have been drinking. We don't allow people who are rowdy, people who are lovely. Essentially we're a family restaurant. We don't want those sort of people causing disturbance. And all I can really do is refer you to the other premises in high impact, cumulative impact areas where we have a similar sort of demand on us, and it is managed very carefully. Do you want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, I think we've got the representation of the cities that we trade in, but from Birmingham City Centre, New Street, to Cardiff City Centre, to Nottingham, I think we were talking about earlier, to Cambridge. And yeah, I think the split clearly changes throughout the day. So in the daytime, I think I quoted 60% of our table service. I could get the stats. I don't have them with me of whether that changes late night, but that bit around the service thing. And we trade in 80 stores as of Friday. Actually, we opened restaurants 79 and 80 on Friday. So we're a big brand that takes the growth in the UK very seriously, and we trade in a lot of city very similar to Oxford. And again, just to I know we talked about staff safe. I'm not sure if you want me to expand on that now.
Yeah, well, I think staff safe's important.
So staff safe, again, the system which links to, I guess it's the first port of call that the cameras are always watching. Right? So that is a camera system that's always on. There's a silent alarm for the team, so that we have door hosts that manage the doors and manage the customers coming in. The second layer then is a silent alarm. Silent alarm purely activates someone then to have a look at their site and monitor what's going on, which then links into the police if it needs. It can also talk to the customer. So if there is any incident within our restaurant, staff safes actually kicks in. And if you experience it, it's quite a commanding strategy around, there's a voice from above that comes and talks and calms things down, but also links to the police should we need response. And clearly then there's the escalation of a proper alarm if we need to. Glad to say that we've never used stage 3 in any of our restaurants. We've been trading for 3 years, but that system again reassures our team and works really well if we have to use it.
Okay, thank you. A final thing from me. I'm curious about your proposal to effectively prevent delivery to anyone who isn't at a residential address. How on earth is that enforceable? What's to stop someone from going on to whatever their platform of choice is and putting in an address and, the address just outside the club that they're at, for example, and having the food delivered there?
Yeah, so you have to put residential address in. So it's set up, for example, you can exclude anything. So you can exclude school deliveries for obvious reasons, etc. So as we set up our contracts, and again, you're a business that's taking the growth in the UK very seriously. So our prime bit, you could get an order from McDonald's, not to name them, but McDonald's, you can get it delivered to a park. You can. And you can select a point in the park where you'd like that delivery to be in. We've restricted that to only residential deliveries.
We've also got a system where you can't essentially hang outside a residential property and see the bike coming and say, "Oh, that's me. Thanks very much. I'll have it." Those sort of things are excluded. So it's also a fundamental. This is not the only city where we've been asked for that condition. I think it applies in an awful lot of the stress areas.
I can see how the technology would prevent, say, park address being delivered to, but dare I say, speaking from experience, what's to stop someone from putting in, I don't know, 89 Queen Street and standing outside? I know you mentioned preventing riders from, or telling riders that they can't deliver to people who are just waving outside, but what rider is going to do that realistically?
Yeah, I mean, the twofold process is, as you well know, I think we all know, we've all probably used delivery systems, that you have to select the residential address, you have to then give the code on your arrival. I think it's a fair assessment that, could I stand outside someone's house, put an address and a code? And then I think it's hard to deny that claim. I think the process that we've got is to minimise and stop within our capability of that not happening.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, your assertion that you're not going to be serving to people who may have consumed lots of alcohol, I'm wondering why you need to be open until 12 o'clock and who you think in Oxford City Centre is going to be coming to your restaurant after 11 o'clock. It's not most likely to be those sort of people.
Yeah, I mean, the experience tells me that they don't. So in particular, student cities, actually. So what we tend to find, there is clearly a demographic that go out and drink and consume. We do not find that demographic in our customer base. We find late night trading is not a huge part of our business, and delivery, by the very application we've made, the delivery is the main bit here from a commercial sense. But we do see couples, singles, people after work, many people within our own industries, many people who work in the pubs and clubs and places in Oxford the night economy isn't always, and I'm sure from the licensing perspective, we see that more and more non-alcohol related customers come to see us, but we see that post-work perspective quite a strong one.
So, but in terms of managing the people that try to get into your restaurant, and there may be many of them, if there's nothing else open, who are inebriated.
Yeah. So is the question, how do we manage? Yeah. I mean, all our team go through training. We have 3 managers on duty at any one time. So it's again a fairly complex business from the back end of making the chicken fresh. I'll reiterate that again. But that whole process of management system, our front host is always a shift manager. So there's always a shift manager front of house, which in my world, that means that counter forward to door, there's a shift manager. They all get trained. So one of the training bits is conflict management, conflict resolution, etc. But again, we train our team very well. And I reiterate that as a brand, we offer something different. This isn't a volume-based business. It has never been so. But actually dealing with that conflict limit, and all I can refer to again is I think we're up to 12, potentially 13 areas of the country where we trade in city centres similar to Oxford, where we just do not have these problems. And we have never had those problems. And dare I say that there's no record at all of us having to use or call the police to support us in any matters within our business.
Thank you. Just on the point that Councillor Tina was raising about managing people who could be drunk as you get towards midnight, you've had one SIA member of staff at the door, one host up to now, as I understand it. One of the conditions that the Thames Valley Police suggest is that you should have 2. How have you found managing rowdy potential customers, drunk potential customers, with only one SIA host at the front of the restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, in general, again, going back, I think we now have 28 sites that trade post-midnight across the UK.
Specifically for Oxford, though.
Oxford, yeah. Fine. I guess my point I was trying to make, so is particularly Oxford, 1, absolutely fine. Again, no registered incident. And one of the things I checked before I came here today, we have a logbook that logs any incidents, not a single one. Across the whole of the UK, we've never had to use 2. And again, we've never had an issue dealing with one thing, but no records on our records from the SIA, which is obviously an independent company that we use to come in, nothing documented.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Councillors, any other questions? No? Anyone? Emma?
Just one. The premises is situated on Queen Street, which we know is a restricted road, restricted to taxis, buses, cyclists. I assume you're proposing to use moped riders, and where are they expected to wait and are they expected to walk on foot? Because obviously we got a kebab van, Hanks, we obviously don't want drivers illegally coming up the road on mopeds in the middle of those 2 venues from a public safety point of view. What is your proposal for moped riders more than cyclists who can come up that road to collect their food for delivery from you?
Yeah, so all the delivery partners have that info. So the pin, if you like, tell them where they should park and where they should collect. So that's the first governance, because I'm guessing that's set up for the whole of Oxford. It'll tell them where they can and can't park, and then they tell them where to walk, a bit like if you get a train and a bus on Google Maps, it tells you where to get off and where to walk. So we rely on the partners doing that.
Unless the cyclist, in which case.
And the cyclist can come straight through. And you put, again, from experience of all of us using delivery drivers, etc., it'll tell you what vehicle each person is using.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I know there's just cycle points out the front, and obviously the further away, the more powerful a motor to take it there. But obviously if you're doing city centre like the university horse, there's probably going to be more expectation of the electronic bike rather than a moped. But I just thought I'd clear out that you was aware that it's a restricted road.
Brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Tina.
So would you refuse, if somebody turned up on the wrong vehicle in that road, would you refuse to give them the food to deliver?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to say if we can see the moped outside our building, then yes.
How would you react if that were a condition of the licence?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How would you react if that were part of the conditions for the variation of your licence?
I personally would be okay with that. Yeah. Again, the person will be on the door, so yeah, absolutely happy.
Just to add, Chair, this is for a new premises, not a variation. No worries.
3 hearings tonight, so
No, it's okay.
Mr. Ofer, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we haven't had an opportunity to talk.
Mr. Ofer, I will say you will have your own opportunity to talk at length, but if you have a specific question for now.
Do you have any other pop-up? UK. So close.
I'd have to defer a couple of minutes to go through them all in my head. We certainly will do. In central London, without a doubt. I just need to have a think about.
And I can ask you.
You operate in all of these premises later on with one SAI registered door supervisor in London.
Yes.
Westminster. We have a business in Westminster, so I'm intrigued to find out that only one door supervisor is allowed to operate on their own in the premises.
I mean, those premises where we use an SI door supervisor, it is one. We're not operating an alcohol business, and we do have strict protocols about, I think people accept that if they're turned away at the door, looking drunk or behaving strangely, it's not so much of a problem. It's more of a problem usually when people get into a premises and cause trouble. So we tend to try and fend it off at the door.
The reason I ask is because, you know, we are going to be sharing a very small space together, and we have door supervisors, and their concerns that have come back to us is, are we going to need to, or what happens if there is something that's going on next door? Effectively, they're asking, you know, are we going to be paid more money because there's going to be potentially more trouble? And
I mean, I think the numbers we're talking about going in between, say, 11 and 12 are really not significant. You know, you're fortunate enough to have people queuing around the block for your premises, which is wonderful. But I think in terms of us, it's really only small numbers going in
That'll be all for now, Mr. Ofer. That'll be all for now. We'll come back to you in a minute. It's all right. Sorry. I'll bring questions to the applicants to a close for now. Thank you all for your forbearance, and turn now to the responsible authorities, in this case, Thames Valley Police. Please outline your report.
Thank you, Chair. I assume that the subcommittee have had a chance to read the document in full, so I will be very brief in my representation. Obviously, the matter of the SSP has been mitigated somewhat by the representations this evening. I do think it's still worth noting that we are still looking at midnight, so this is a matter that still is nighttime economy, and there are issues within the nighttime economy between 11 and 12. I would suggest that if there is going to be this impact, do we want to see issues which are at a lower level earlier in the evening now start to plateau, akin to 1 o'clock and later? I will concede I have spoken to my opposites in the various other force areas that the applicant has said they've got premises operating in cumulative impact zones. I've not had anyone come back to say there are issues directly at the premises, but I would again reiterate that the special saturation policy does not concern itself with the running of an individual venue. It is concerned with the footfall and the issues around increased footfall within that geographical area. I am glad to hear that the applicant, if the licence was granted, would agree to the conditions, and I see no problems with the amendments that they've put. I would say that, and I do have to disagree with the applicants in this, that lone working SIA door staff for us, or greeters, as I think is the case here, put themselves potentially at risk. Security tend to be, I use the analogy of a seatbelt in a car. You don't need it until you need it. And I think it's the same with security. And I appreciate what they're saying here about people showing up the door being refused are perhaps more inclined to to leave quietly from a late night refreshment venue, but I would have to disagree with that as well. From 20 years experience, I do know that people generally don't like being refused. And if they've been drinking, they're going to be less inclined to acquiesce to that request. And at that point, say, if you've got one member of the public speaking to a doorman, then that's arguably going to be manageable. But in all likelihood, we're looking at groups. And I have seen some quite horrendous assaults over the years. And I do think I personally have a lot of concerns if we're looking at one SIA on the door. It puts them at risk. It makes them ineffectual if they do have to go hands-on. And it's just ineffectual. The matter of Deliveroo drivers, and I'll come to the councillor's question in this part. I think Emma was right. She was talking about within the immediate vicinity when she first answered the question. There are, I think, a couple of venues that use Deliveroo and other gig economy delivery services, and there are a lot of e-bikes and e-scooters knocking about in the city centre. It is Queen Street itself is a very busy road. We have a lot of, I know it's closed off to most, but we get a lot of taxis driving down there. I've watched from the city centre CCTV suites of an evening when I've been observing Mr. Ofer's operation, and the number of hackneys that go down there is...
It's the main rank in and out of the city centre.
It is, so it's a very high demand area. So I think the concern, and I think Emma's dealt with it to an extent, is we would not want to see scooters come flying down there or making use of the pavement. Mr. Ofer, obviously, we've talked about door spaces and stuff like that. Now, in part due to the smoking ban, and in part due to Mr. Ofer being very successful, in his operation. Again, having monitored the frontage of Hanks since it started trading as Hanks, and even before that when it was Maxwell's over the years, from the CCTV suite. Again, you will see smoking areas, you will see queues trying to get in, but you will also see pockets of people that are just milling about. They might have left and are looking to move on, or they're waiting for their friends before they go in. So you will see, and you do see on a weekly basis, large groups. Now, it's not so much the size of the door, because anyone that's been into Hanks will know that door just takes you straight to a flight of stairs and straight up. So there is no waiting space there. Mr. Ofer has to process his customers out on the pavement. And forgive me, I don't know when Mr. Ofer's business starts to get busy, but from what I have seen, there is a lot of potential for it to be from about 11 o'clock onwards. So the frontage, the immediate vicinity outside of Popeyes would be, and is actually, in all fairness, already quite a cluttered area with the public waiting to get in, or indeed looking to go to the late night refreshment van. So there would be some overspill. I'd have concerns about Mr. Ofer's door staff getting involved outside of the remit of their business. I'm not sure how it works, but there may be issues in terms of the insurance that those door staff are covered by if they go off the premises. But again, I've seen Hanks door staff intervening stuff across the street before now, so I know that there would be an element of feeling that they have to do the right thing. I do think still with the midnight, I do think that there is a risk to cumulative impact policy. The conditions I've put forward, I think mostly, if not all, focus on how the venue is managed. I don't think that you can condition the SSP as a policy, but I do think there's still an issue around that. I've heard the applicant say that business between 11 and midnight, there wouldn't be a lot of people crossing the threshold of the business, in answer to Mr. Ofer's question. So I would be suggesting maybe, or I'd like to ask whether there is a need to open at all to the public past 11 o'clock, and whether they just have delivery. Appreciate that doesn't necessarily address all of our issues, but in terms of the primary concern for the police around cumulative impact, they are right that delivery, does not encourage people to remain in the area. Quite the opposite, actually. If people are knowing that their delivery is en route home, they're going to want to disperse more quickly to get there. So I think for me, one of the things I'm finding hard to reconcile is if we're saying that the amount of people between 11 and midnight that's going to cross the threshold is going to be small. In terms of the bottom line, would there not be any scope to close as normal at 11 o'clock and then have the delivery as the only compromise really I can see to addressing this SSP concern? That's it from me, Chair. It's a bit of a funny one, to be honest with you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, do you have any questions for Alex? Okay.
Yeah, were you happy with what they were saying about their CCTV system being loved by the police?
I did have one question actually, but I didn't get a chance because Jeff couldn't win it. Potentially it's useful. What I would need to know more about though is whether this goes through to a control room, because I can tell you here and now that Bravo Victor, our CCTV suite, is not covered 24/7. Without going too much into it, because I'm acutely aware this is a public hearing, there are staffing shortages at the moment. We're down to 2. So it would be, if they're expecting the CCTV unit to be able to link into it, I can't guarantee that there would be somebody on the other end, really. So it's a nice to have, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to prevent, it's going to help us with, potentially de-escalate, but certainly evidence stuff, but it's not going to deal with the immediate 4 licensing objectives, I'd suggest.
Can I ask Mr. Browning or Mr. Ewan to contribute anything that might be relevant?
Well, we hear what's being said, absolutely. I mean, I think we've found that the staff safe system is useful in most of it. As Graham said, it luckily hasn't been implemented to stage 3 ever, which is a relief, because that would mean there was a serious incident. But I think it's there also as a very useful deterrent. And there is a stage 2 where most problems can be de-escalated without police involvement in any event. Right.
Specifically on the matter of CCTV feed monitoring.
Yeah, my understanding. So I've come across that comment before once where, there's the discussion around the fact that we monitor it, but the police don't, because ultimately we have the resource, but the sounds of it, the police don't. And what it provides is the eyes to the phone call. So actually, in the event that it can't feed, then those guys who operate and can see would then log it with the police and can then, I guess, relay what's happening in that store. So my understanding of the system as an ops director who's certainly not an expert on CCTV, that's the payment plan, that's the technology that we use. So my understanding is that it passes on. If there is nothing to pass it on to, then it used out almost as the eyes in the sky to relay what's happening in that store to the police control room, is my understanding.
Does that satisfy your concern?
Yes, yeah.
Are there any further questions? Yes, Councillor Tina.
It would be useful for you to respond to Alex's suggestion about allowing people in from 11, and I suppose just having takeaway from 11 till 2. I don't know, you may not be able to do that immediately, but if you want to take a few minutes to think about that and come back to us?
I mean, certainly I think that's something that Popeyes would concede on, perhaps for 5 days of the week. They would ask the committee to look very carefully at Friday and Saturday. Those tend to be busier days, more demand certainly. Obviously you're acutely aware that each application is looked at on its merits, and we would say that we think it's a fair time. We're obviously aware of the policy, but think that it's not beyond what restaurants trade to and that sort of thing. And if the committee would at least look at midnight on Friday and Saturday, then the other days, I'm sure they would concede to have delivery only if the committee were minded to look at that.
So it's just another question. If you're proposing closing at 12, how long does it take to cook? Is the last time somebody would order would be what?
Well, I think one of the conditions is that nobody can come in more than 15 minutes before closing. So that would be the absolute final time. So basically no admittance 15 minutes before the premise is closed to enable the last order to be processed and cooked and handed out.
Which would take 15 minutes, we assume.
Yeah, so 4 minutes, 26 seconds is my average ticket time. An interesting fact for you. So although we cook it fresh, we have permission to hold it for 15 minutes as part of our standards. So the idea when you order, my average waiting time is 4 minutes, just over, let's call it 4.5 minutes.
Right. Who's it to? That's Alex.
So how do you feel about Friday and Saturday to 12 and the rest of the week till 11? I imagine they're the days you're most worried.
I'm sorry, Chair, as the police, Friday and Saturday nights for us are our busiest times. So it would still be a concern for us.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Alex? Alison.
I may have missed something, so forgive me if I have, but on the conditions at page 37, isn't number 8 requiring 2 door staff? So yes. So currently there's 1, but if the subcommittee were minded to incorporate the conditions that you put forward, there would be 2.
A minimum of 2. But there is a risk assessment in place, so potentially more if it was deemed necessary by the licence holder, but a minimum of 2.
So what hours is that between you suggest?
My personal suggestion, or there's nothing specified in the condition. I'm going to be honest with you, Councillor, and this is going to sound like a cop-out. I don't know their operation. So we'd be looking to them to do a risk assessment, which would then be submitted to myself and Emma. And if the licence was granted, we would be looking at seeing how that played out to amend. I mean, based on 20 years experience of Oxford nighttime economy, I'd be arguably saying something certainly no later than maybe 9 o'clock in the evening, because you do start to get that footfall of drunken disorder occurring. And depending on what time the hours were to be, we would be saying door staff would be signing off once the premises and the immediate vicinity were closed and cleared of customers. But 9 o'clock in the evening, I think, would have to be the starting point for us in terms of the starting hours.
Can I just add that I'm told that we would do from 7 p.m. in any event, because we have a 5-hour contract with our security people. And also just there would be a small amendment to condition 8 to say that security would obviously only apply until the premises are cleared of customers and closed to the public.
Thank you. Beg your pardon. We'll move now to the interested party. Mr. President, Mr. Ofer, you must fully explain the nature of your representation, addressing the licensing objectives. You may call a witness if desired, but I see none. And please try not to cross-examine anyone. If there is a suite of questions you'd ask people, then clear it with me.
My point is that Queen Street is an incredibly busy street, and what you're asking to do is to add more people, and that's ultimately my concern. And I agree. I mean, you're a great family restaurant that wants to stay open after families want to go out. So you are looking for a new market, which commercially, as a business person, I completely respect and understand. But that doesn't pull back from the issues at hand that happen later on in the evening with large volumes of people. And you're saying that, well, you don't expect to have that many people, but I disagree. You hope to be incredibly busy. Otherwise, you wouldn't open. And that is ultimately my argument, that we are busy, you are busy, there are too many people on Queen Street. Which obviously has my argument in terms of public safety, like, you know, public nuisance.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ofer? Councillor Morris?
Thank you. So we had some reassurances around the number of incidents that have occurred then. I'm just wondering if you might be able to give us some insight about Hanks, about the likelihood of your security staff being called upon, for example, unexpectedly. Do you have any indication you can give us around that?
Well, we have 6 door supervisors, SRH's door staff, on a Saturday evening, of which 2 are outside at a time. And what I'd be concerned is that if we had to pull one of the door supervisors downstairs because our queue was then people were coming to collect with their scooters, or if they were open later, we asked them to queue in an orderly fashion, and then there's another business that is then saying, excuse me, I need to get through. For me, that it just creates a form of potential flare-ups, which I can see happening. I'm not here to disparage or try and make Popeyes not be a great business, because clearly they are. There's 80 of them and there's only 4 of me. But I do know from my experience in the nighttime economy, whereas these guys are a family-run restaurant, they're impinging into the nighttime economy, which is very, very different.
But Mr. Ofer, Popeyes would say that they have 80 locations elsewhere in the country, some of them in central London,
absolutely,
and other large cities, and places with very high traffic and very small streets. And they manage. So why wouldn't they here?
That's for you to decide. I mean, I'm pointing out
your opinion.
In my opinion, from 25 years of working licensed trade, where there's alcohol involved, they will 100% need 2 door supervisors, if not more, for example. And that argument that up until midnight, there is not much difference between 11 and 12, I would massively argue with that.
Arguably the alcohol becoming from
absolutely. And I think Mr. Bloomfield's comment of, well, if you have your same closing time of 11, but you look to seek your business to grow through a delivery system, I don't do delivery, so I wouldn't know that business model. But from a practical point of view of keeping public safety, public nuisance in hand, I would think that would be something from our point of view, selfish point of view for Hanks, would be much more manageable and acceptable.
I have one more question. You said in your written submission and earlier on that you'd never been in touch with Popeyes, or that Popeyes hadn't been in touch with you. Did you at any point proactively contact Popeyes seeking to establish dialogue about this?
No, I did not. No, I don't have any contact with Popeyes.
Even after you knew that this was going to occur?
No, I didn't know.
Why not?
Because I knew they'd be well represented and they would come whether I made an objection or not.
All right. Thank you very much. Just one question.
Sorry, I'm just to the applicants, you said you accepted the conditions that the police put forward, apart from those ones about changing your hours. So that does include being door supervisors. Am I just checking?
Yes,
do accept
that. So that was agreed up to the point of the premises closing. Yeah.
So just to point out, condition 8 does say that the door supervisor will only be there upon a risk assessment. It's not a permanent basis. It's if the management at the time do a risk assessment and deem it necessary. So for example, if there's a high scale event in the city centre, then they may risk assess the need for door supervisor, but it's not a permanent condition that they must have 2 door supervisors at any given time. It's a risk assessment that determines whether they need them, done by the management of the premises.
But that's something that can be specified in the conditions of a license hypothetically. Thank you very much, Mr. Ofer. We now invite closing submissions from the applicant. If there are any points you would like to make summarising your application, now is the opportunity to do so.
I mean, I won't spend time going over what we've said already. You've heard our submissions about the way that we operate. We take on board the SSP, we take it very seriously. We've scaled back, I think, quite significantly from the original application. We would ask you to consider, you know, where we got to at the end, which is Friday and Saturday and delivery times on other days. All I say really is look at the evidence of how we've traded in the estate in similar sorts of situations. We are a responsible operator. We have a lot of additional systems that others don't to try and mitigate problems wherever they might occur. And we commend the application to you and want to be a good neighbour and a good operator within the city of Oxford.
Thank you. Emma.
Nothing from myself, Chair.
Thank you. Alex for TVP.
Nothing further, thank you, Chair.
Mr. Ofer. Thank you. In that case, I will adjourn the hearing so that the panel can deliberate and will let you know the outcome of your application shortly, hopefully.